But legacy is not going back. Legacy is going forward. What are you going to build? I must follow them because I am their leader. There's such wisdom in that. I took a risk. We're sponsoring the first 100 girls.
Wow.
Today, we have over 1,000 alumni. 70% of those are gainfully employed within the IT industry. A publisher came to me and said, Company X wants to purchase 100,000 copies of your book, provided you remove 2 lines. I said, I refuse to remove that line.
Think 360, build your own way. Turn your pockets, seem to pay. 360, day and night. Entrepreneurs, so we gon' be alright.
And welcome to Think 360, coming at you from Toronto, Canada. Think 360 is really about unlocking those tips and tricks to help entrepreneurs and business owners get to where they need to do faster. And of course, we do that by speaking to leaders who have been extremely successful. Now, if you haven't already pre-ordered my book, Think 360, be sure to head on to 3dcrystal.com. Click on Think 360 and you can find more information there. Today, I'm extremely honored to have someone very special. He's a thinker, he's an author, he's a filmmaker, he's a reader, he's a public speaker, and especially relevant for this particular series, he's a leader. He's currently the executive director of the United Global Initiative. Dr. Hasnain Walji, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. It's great being here. Yes.
You know, first and foremost, you just had a chance to walk what I've been told is the largest laser hub dedicated to SSLE or subsurface laser engraving. I'm just curious to know what your first impressions are.
Hard to put it in words. I was totally amazed at the technology. Just could not imagine. What really took me was that kitchen that you made for me and my wife, right in front of me within seconds. That's impressive.
Thank you. That means a lot coming from you. Thank you. Let me start with my first question. When you wake up in the morning, what motivates you to do what you do?
To answer that question very simply is, I wake up in the morning and look at myself and say, what commitments have I made to others, to uplift others, to do whatever nonprofit work that I have committed to? I go to it first. My principle has always been, get that out of the way. Get the humanity work, which is what I call it. Get the humanity work out of the way in the morning, whatever it takes, and then go do your own work.
You know, I started off by saying that you are a lifelong interfaith activist. You're a leader. Maybe you could explain, what role does faith and spirituality play in making everyday decisions as a leader?
So leadership is sometimes seen as power. You sit in a chair, you're a leader, you're a chairman. I've never looked at it at that. You know, the concept of servant leadership and all these theories that are there, one needs to put them, these into practice. And I see leadership not in boards, not within those structures, not that I am in any way demeaning or decrying the structures. We all need bureaucracy, we all need structures. But these structures need to be framework that we can build on, not cages that we keep ourselves in. And therefore, I look at leadership and say, how can I empower the next person? How can I see that that person can do better than what I have done in the past? And when I see you, Riyaz, and this is kind of a two-way conversation, so allow me to jump in here and say, I'm truly, truly, impressed with your trajectory and the manner that you have grown your company yourself over the last 20, 25 years that I have known you. I'm simply awed. I'm not the leader here. You are.
Thank you. I'm humbled to hear that. I want to play a little game with you. I want to hop into a time capsule and I want to go back in time. So let's say, for example, we had an opportunity to do that. I mean, they say hindsight's 20/20. Let's choose the number 20. If you had the opportunity to go back and meet your 20-year-old self, tell me, what would you whisper in your ear?
The very first thing I would tell him, keep a journal.
Oh, 100%.
I wish I had.
Yeah.
Keep a journal so that you grow through reading the journal back. Secondly, I look at myself and I started with an IBM PC, a 4060 or 3060, whatever it was
Yeah.
called at that time.
386, 486.
Yeah, 386 and all that, the one with a green screen.
Yeah.
And I say, don't let the technology that's in front of you limit you. I'll give you a little anecdote. I went to buy my very first computer, and this was way back in the 80s. I was trying to do desktop publishing on a DOS PC.
Nice.
Didn't succeed, but at least I tried.
Yeah. The monochrome screen, right?
The monochrome screen and the 8086, processor. So I went to purchase my very first computer, and the guy says, you have a choice, 10 megabytes or 20 megabytes. And to cap it all, he said, I won't want you to waste your money. You never use 20 megabytes. Just go for 10.
Oh my goodness.
And I would have said again to my 20-year-old, say, don't limit yourself. Go for it. And the third thing that I would say is read a book called The Power Shift, which I read at the age of 40.
Okay.
Read it at 20.
The Power Shift.
The Power Shift by Alan Toffler.
Okay.
That actually gave me a totally different perspective as to why I am within the tech sector that I am at the age of 75.
That's so brilliant. What really resonates with what you've just said is the idea of journaling. I actually talk about this in my book. I did mention documenting by way of video. And, even when you're finished a meeting, for example, or you're on your way to a meeting, or my team, they'll see me videoing even when I'm making a cold call, because you just never know that cold call that you make,
right,
when you finally do get, for example, Disney to list our 3D crystal. I have the history to being able to tell the story of when I was just calling, right? So journaling, an incredible tip that I really strongly agree with as well. Okay, so, we go back to the whole concept of leadership. What moment in your life shaped your understanding of leadership the most, and how did it change you?
The boardroom.
Okay.
Being in the boardroom.
Okay.
Looking at the diverse opinions and the egos that were present in that boardroom, I looked at and I said, this can't go on, not in our boardroom. The whole idea was each one, and this happens in every boardroom, each one was, pitching their idea, their concept, and felt a personal gratification that, well, my idea went through. Each one for themselves. And you had to keep being in a leadership position, especially in the nonprofit sector, where you have many volunteers. I had to keep the peace within those teams.
That's tough.
It is. And I said, how do I do this? And that's been my leadership journey, to say, how do you keep a diverse team together, that at the end of the day, they feel that they're pushing this thing together and not each one on their own. And the metaphor that I use for the teams when I talk to them is two porcupines. Two porcupines are trying to keep warm in the winter.
That's tough.
Now, if they come too close, they'll prick each other. If they're too far, they will not be able to keep each other warm. You need to maintain the right balance and the right distance between those spikes in order to keep warm as well as not prick each other.
So true. Yeah.
And that's a philosophy.
Yeah.
As a leader,
Yeah.
that one has to say, yes, you're leading, but at the same time, you need to make sure that you're following. Because I remember Mahatma Gandhi's saying when he was doing his Dandi March, his Salt March, and when he was walking, some people went ahead of him as they were walking towards the Salt March. And an American journalist was following him, said, Mr. Gandhi, these people are going ahead, but you're the leader. He said, exactly. He was a very, witty man. He said, exactly. I must follow them because I am their leader. There's such wisdom in that. To be able to follow the trend, to be able to continue, take the team, and the team feels that they're moving forward. And really that push is so very important.
Very profound. In fact, over here, as I hear you speak, you'll talk to the team later and you'll see that our structure, we didn't actually even create a hierarchy. What we did is we created circles. So of course you have the nucleus, and that being my father, who's the inspiration to all of us. And then outside of that, the circle grows, right? And everybody kind of has their area of expertise. But I want to ask you, is that, we talk about leadership. I mentioned earlier that you're based in America and you've got teams around the world. How is it that, maybe you can just give me a little tip here, is how are you able to motivate these people? Because I've seen them, in many times it's even voluntarily. They're excited to do the tasks that you're giving them. What is the secret sauce, or what is it about your leadership style that's getting that to happen?
Sometimes I don't know myself. But what I do know is this. If you empower people to make those decisions rather than looking over them, micromanaging, so that's number one, empowerment. And the CodeGirls program that I had, really, we call it a women empowerment program. And a little story on that to say, when you say how, I'm sitting here in, or at least in Houston, where I live, and we've got an awesome program going on, which is CodeGirls, which is in Pakistan. And there's now one in Skardu, right up in the mountains.
So it's expanded.
Yes, and there's one in Cape Town too.
Wow.
So the way the program started would give you an indication. I used to work with a company outsourcing my tech work for 10 years. I found out at some point that this was a woman-led company. And I read her story on LinkedIn almost 10 years after we had been working with them. They always were on budget, always delivered on time. And I had no issue to even talk to the owner. And they were supplying whatever I needed. But when I read her story on LinkedIn, I called her up. Apparently, the story is, as you know, within the Eastern cultures, these girls get married at the age of 18.
Okay.
And then the rest is they become homemakers in most cases, and life goes on. And that's how society works. Well, this lady decided to do something a little different. Pushed by maybe the husband, by the father. She did a short course in programming or whatever it was called in those days. Long story short, today, maybe 15, 17 years later, she owns a company which employs over 100 people in Pakistan. She's running a thriving company. So I called her up. And I said, I don't want to, put that name. She may or may not particularly appreciate that, but I called her and I said, just call her Mary, whatever the name is. And I said, Mary, look, how can I create 100 Marys in Karachi? This is my nonprofit hat through the United Global Initiative because our focus is women empowerment. And she said, give me 2 weeks and I'll come back to you. She comes back with another person who she had been working with. They presented me a plan which seems plausible. I don't know them from Adam except for the fact that they were a good company as an outsourced company. I took a risk, took a hunch, and said, go for it. We're sponsoring the first 100 girls.
Wow.
Today, we have over 1,000 alumni from Karachi and from Skardu and Cape Town. 70% of those are gainfully employed within the IT industry. Now, in some cases, in the Western culture or in the Western world, that may not seem like a feat. In South Asia, these girls come from the most marginalized communities where the maximum household income is under $300 to $400 a month.
Got it.
They come in, when they leave after 8 months of that boot camp that they had designed, they leave from being shy girls who had no idea what the world was about, totally sheltered. They walk out as young women ready to take on the world and say, yes, I can do this. Now, when we see that, I see the team is motivated because it's a project that does it. So the idea is to choose the right project, to make those critical decisions that you have recognized a talent, and then go for it. Just like the story that you shared with me, and if I'm allowed to do that.
Absolutely.
As to how you went to your bank manager. So the bank manager took a risk.
He did.
And you are where you are today. So I think leadership means that intuitive ability to spot the right investment that you're going to make, whether it's in the for-profit sector or in the non-profit sector. That human beings are human beings. You motivate them, you take a risk. If you do not take a risk, you'll never know. Yes, I could have failed. I could have made a commitment for those 100 girls, lost, a few $1,000s or whatever, and I would have moved on. And it's not that I've not done that before. If you've been an entrepreneur, and particularly in the early days in the tech industry, then you're bound to have made those mistakes. So this is what it is.
It's so insightful, actually. And what the key points I'm hearing you say in this is it's not just about finding the right project. It's about kind of being able to identify the right people. And people have opportunities that come right before their nose every day, but they just don't seize them. They're blind to those opportunities. So keeping your eyes open to those opportunities. The other thing that you mentioned here was about failing. I mean, couldn't it be argued that we want to fail Because if we're always winning and we're never losing, it means we're not taking enough risk. The person that's got their music in the top 40 charts, for example, we don't know about all the songs that they came out with that they failed on before they actually made it to the top, right? So, no, I greatly appreciate that.
And the other thing is persistence. I talked about this IBM PC, right?
Yeah.
86, and that doesn't go away, or Toffler's book, which made such a big difference to me, the power shift. So I went on this journey. I qualified as a nutritionist. I didn't want to practice. It was just not me to practice as a healthcare professional. That was not in me. What inspired me was nutritional science could make a change in the lifestyle of people. And as a communicator, I decided to build a database. So I went to my bank manager and said, I want to create a database, a nutrition database, which had not been created before, where I put in all the health conditions and put in the nutritional supplements, vitamins and minerals that you need in that, so that nutritionists, pharmacists could use that to prescribe or to recommend nutrition supplements. And that was my PhD too, to look at optimal daily intakes of vitamins. For example, vitamin C is 60 milligrams according to the Canadian and the US government, 60 milligrams. My meta-analysis and the research that I did showed me that it all depended on who you were, your predisposition to any health condition, cancers, diabetes, whatever it is, or some genetic issues. You would need specifically higher amounts of vitamin C, for example. So my research said, no, you need 1,000 milligrams, not 60 milligrams. And Dr. Linus Pauling was, my go-to researcher and a great scientist on vitamin C, for example. Anyway, long story short, so I created this PhD program into a database that I wanted to use. So the bank manager says, look, two things. Number one, unfortunately, his bank manager, my bank manager wasn't the same as yours. So he said two things. Nutrition, come on, that's fringe. This was in the 80s.
Yeah.
That's fringe.
Yeah.
And IT, come on, that's fringe too. So he said, sorry, I can't lend you, money. Go find something more stable and I will lend you the money. But not these two, because they're fringe.
My goodness.
So I said, okay, you beg, borrow, steal from the family here, whoever you could. I made the database. Persistently, I went through because I was convinced by Alvin Toffler that is the direction to go. Because he said, just as the feudal lords had to give up their wealth to the industrialists because of the Industrial Revolution, he wrote this 45 or 50 years ago now, that power will ultimately shift from machines to information. I had no idea at that time, nor did many people, of the name Google or the name Microsoft or whatever it is, Amazon, whatever it is, that whoever owned data would be the wealth creator. But I had this in my mind, a goal to say, this man is a futurist. If he's saying this, there must be something here. Let me begin. And that's where my journey began, as somebody who entered into the tech industry and said, okay, how do you use? I studied then, went to study persuasive technology and all those good things where, we use these within. And now, obviously, with AI and all that, I think I'm being left far behind because things are moving so fast. At my age, I can't even keep up, but I try.
Well, listen, it's interesting that they're saying that at that time that IT and, nutrition were fringe, yet that's exactly today what is everybody's focus. That's what's actually generating a lot of the, and accommodating a lot of the needs, right? And I know this wasn't the point, but I am curious to know, was there really that much of a gap, 60 and 1,000 on the vitamin C?
It is. A lot of medics, when they would listen to this, would say, no, that's not possible. I have at least 6,000 papers that I did my meta-analysis on. And I'll give you one simple example from nature. Okay. By the way, the human being and the bat are the only two species that cannot manufacture their own vitamin C from their body.
Okay.
Every other creature can. So what they did was they tested this on a goat. A goat produces a certain amount. Now I forget the exact amount. It's probably like almost like 0.3, 0.4 kilograms, whatever, that number is. It's like 40 years ago that I was doing this work. And when that goat was stressed, by taking the goat round and round and round, it produced 4 times more vitamin C than it was producing naturally. What does it tell you? That our creator up there has programmed our bodies to do something. So the need for vitamin C, and now it's been proved, the whole idea of inflammation, the idea of enhancing your immune system, all these things are factors where vitamin C and along with other antioxidants, vitamin A, vitamin C, and vitamin E have become extremely important antioxidants so that you're able to keep your immune system in check. And ultimately, everything boils down to having a strong immune system. And that's, nutrition science.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and we did. I mean, there is enough proof out there. And there are other things that, the medical fraternity was saying, and please, I respect our doctors. We could not do without them. We couldn't be where we are without their emergency medicine. But when it comes to holistic medicine, when it comes to integrative medicine, there is much more our universities and our educational institutions can do in terms of teaching nutrition. Do you know that a doctor, at least in the US, I don't know about Canada, a doctor in the 7-year plan of becoming a doctor probably has 2 to 3 hours of nutrition education in there.
Oh, really? No, I didn't know that.
Yes.
I see.
So this is one of the challenges we've had, convincing the medical fraternity that there is a role for vitamins, minerals.
Yeah.
And I've written several books, on the subject. And in fact, I was amongst a few who coined this term because they used to say alternative medicine. Well, you're now marginalized. When you say alternative, then they would say, no, we would like to use complementary medicine. So now you're saying there's something there, but you're adding to it. I said, no, that's not the right terminology. I mean, in marketing, you know this better than I do. It's how you frame a particular word. It's how you frame a term. So I coined the term at that time with a few friends, and we said, why don't we call it integrative medicine? Right. And I ended up sponsored by the Natural Medicine Society in the UK, where they sponsored 6 of my books, where I wrote from an integrative perspective, where you had allopathic medicine, along with homeopathic medicine, along with herbal medicine. So you brought all these things together with several health conditions to say each one can work. The one point that I would like to make, and this is I'm on my hobby horse now, but people go to herbal medicine, people go to complementary medicine, as it's still being called sometimes, or holistic health, herbs, vitamins, as a last resort, not as a first point of call.
Okay.
When everything else fails within the medical fraternity, say, is there an herb that
should they flip it around?
It should be. Because these are the most non-invasive, softer ways of strengthening your immune system, or whatever else that you're doing. So you need to flip it, but the society works in a way, and all we can do is to be change makers. We need to be patient. It really will.
Yeah. And I said, he's a thinker, he's a reader, and you can see that a lot of thought has gone into, and a lot of work has gone into what he's saying here. Of course, you've written a lot about this. We alluded to, so the book's available on Amazon to read as well.
Yes, they are. These books are almost 35 years old now. So I would caution the readers to say, if you at all pick it up, make sure that there's a second source that you're looking at. But these are sometimes opportunities that come in business. As a writer, it was my profession, and sometimes you have to make the hard decisions. I was working on a book with a hormone called DHEA. This is like a growth hormone.
Okay.
And it has certain capabilities of enhancing your immune system, but excess of it or long-term use of it has not been, even today, it's not been verified. A publisher came to me and said, Company X wants to purchase 100,000 copies of your book, provided you remove 2 lines where you have written that DHEA utility is only for the short term and that the long-term impact has not been identified yet. So I would caution my readers to do this with care and not to use it in the long term. This is a short-term thing. I said, I refuse to remove that line.
Oh, okay.
It is, you're not playing, with people's lives. I could not have it on my conscience that by deleting those 2 lines, earning an income for 100,000 copies of that book would impact one single person who had taken that DHA for a long time. And in a way, I was vindicated because some of these hormones have actually proved to be counterproductive in long-term use. I didn't have a data at that time, but now we do.
And that's principle right there. 100,000 copies for sale. And 2 lines, matter of principle. We just talked about natural medicines. I know you've led a lot of nonprofits. You've authored books, as we talked. You've built tech solutions. Tell me, what's the common thread between all of these projects?
Empowerment.
Okay.
Empowerment. That's a word that I live by. how can I do better for my fellow creatures? This is part of my faith tradition too. It's part of every faith tradition to see that you are of some service to humanity. Because if you come on this earth, you graze your grass, and then you go away. You've done nothing. But you come to this world, while you are grazing your grass, you're also doing something for your fellow creatures. And to me, whether it's business, whether it's a non-profit world, it really means, even in the boardroom, if we're making decisions and we're saying if human dignity is not being maintained here, I don't want that business. I do not wish to partake of that. Because to me, humanity, human dignity, the idea of empathy, the idea of integrity, these values are extremely important. They need to be, at the forefront.
So true.
And this really has been that ethos, and everything is encompassed within the idea of thinking empowerment for the other people. I can do it for myself. I could have, with the grace of God, we have had some modicum of success in various places. But to me, that girl walking into CodeGirls program, a shy young girl who now has marketing experience, who now has soft skills like financial literacy, in addition to coding, somebody who could barely use a keyboard, now goes out and creates a website for a company, and she's earning her own keep, taking home $150, say, for example,
Right.
in a home whose total income is $300. Can you see the impact
Yeah.
of that $150 in that home? That's what makes me sort of take, and that's what makes me really feel blessed that one is able to do a little something for another creature, another human being.
Isn't it so much more fun when you're actually helping someone to learn and help themselves?
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, the whole idea, and this is the whole philosophy, and I don't want to take this conversation to another tangent, but the idea of giving and the pleasure in terms of when you give. So when they say that when you make a lot of money, don't raise your standard of living, raise your standard of giving.
Awesome.
And this is not mine. I read it, so I stole it from someone.
Amazing.
But it's remained with me that raise your standard of giving and see what happens. And the universe works in a phenomenal manner when you start giving to see as to what you are receiving.
I know a lot of the viewers here are people that are contemplating getting into the 3D crystal business, or you're already in it. I want you to take this lesson over here is that I love it when you guys are sending me photos of your receipts and those huge transactions that you're doing. But it's so important to combine the idea of making money in your business, which is absolutely fine. You should be so excited about the money that you're making in your business. It's a business. You're meant to make money. You want to grow your market share. You want to grow your margin, but couple that with giving. And when you do, you'll kind of see how it snowballs. And not only does your level of satisfaction increase, but now all of a sudden you're helping your business and you're helping other people as well. So thank you for that.
Just a rejoinder on that, and something that I share with some of my friends.
Mm-hmm.
Almost every faith has some way of paying, tithes or tithes, however you pronounce it. Here in Canada, you've got different pronunciations. But paying something out of your income becomes a religious obligation within lots of faiths.
Mm-hmm.
And I say this, that it's not just about giving money. It's easy to write a check and say, get out of my hair. And I'm a professional beggar when it comes to raising money for charity. So a lot of people, friends who have been very successful, to say, okay, here is a check, just go away. Please, I don't have time. I think there is a tax on one's time. As Muhammad Ali said, and I'm paraphrasing perhaps, to say that service to humanity is a rent that you pay for your space on this earth.
Wow.
So it's not just about money, but it's also about giving your time. And when you give your time, you can see the pleasure and you can feel that fulfillment and satisfaction to say, I'm not saying don't give money, please do. We all non-profits required, whatever you're supporting, but take some time out for another human being. Take some time out so that another society can be better. And you will see the results. So it's money as well as time. So it's time and talent both.
I see. Amen to that. I mean, it's going to shape the kind of a leader that you are and that you're seen by those that are part of your team and network as well. I'm inspired by the fact that you've written so many books. You just learned the fact that I've written my own book, Think360.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much. It was an exciting but a long effort. And I'll tell you is that I was encouraged by so many of you viewers actually to come out with it. But then I had those that were really, they care for my interests quite a bit. And they were like, don't write this book. Please don't write this book. Because in this book, I'm literally giving tips and tricks and my recipes for how I market, how I achieve what I do. How do I get my product into, in my first year, 200 locations without even paying rent? How do I get all these different high profile projects? But I enjoy it. And I just feel that when the tide comes in, all boats rise, and so that's why I did it. And, it took so long for one book. I have no idea how you've come out with all your books. But one thing I know about your books is that they blend history, humor, heritage. How is it that you're, able to share your story and your truth while keeping the reader engaged at the same time?
So this did not just come overnight. By the way, how long did it take you to write your first book?
It took, let's say a little over a year.
It took me 4 years to write my first book.
Okay.
It's called The Vitamin Connection, or The Vitamin Guide. And it took me 4 years to write my first book. After that, it took 1 year to write 4 books.
Got it.
So once you're into the rhythm, you get a good agent, it works. But and it didn't begin that way, because talking about vitamins was very scientific in some ways. But I learned something when I went to a publisher in the UK. That's where I used to live. And I was challenged by the publisher. I was sitting in one of these old publisher houses in Russell Square. I don't know if you're those familiar with the UK. Russell Square is a book area. And I go into this room with 4 gray-suited men with my agent interviewing me about the book series that I was proposing, the integrative book series that I was proposing. And one of them looks at me, and by the way, I had the support of the Natural Medicine Society. And that's why they actually even gave me an interview. If I had not had the support, I probably would not even get in. Anyway, so one of these gentlemen, elderly gentlemen, said, but English is not your first language. What makes you think that you're going to be a good writer for us? And the nuances of that question was very evident. And I was the only brown person in the room. And my agent, she cringed. She cringed at that question. The others kind of tried to, because this man was old school. And they thought I might react. They thought, I might take it, in a slightly different way. So I said, sir, it is not a matter of language. Any good editor can improve my bad language if it's bad language. So what I am is a bridge between the ivory towers, the academia, and the consumer. All this wonderful work in nutrition takes place in the ivory towers. It doesn't get to the consumer. I am that bridge to be able to do that. Long story short, I did get that contract. But this is what I'd learned, having written several books, to say that one needs to reach. And in order to reach, you don't need to be a hypocrite or sugarcoat anything. But humor, as they would say in the Reader's Digest, is the best medicine. So you try and, clothe certain truths with humor. And in this case, yes, you may have noticed in all my blogs, in all my writings, that Mullah Nasruddin is my co-writer.
Okay.
This mythical character has so many great things that he says, but in a very humorous manner. Just yesterday, in a talk that I was doing, where we were talking about learning, just to bring some levity here, and I cannot, not do this, is he said, goes to his teacher, Mullah Nasruddin. Okay. He's actually a mythical character. Although the Turks say that he was from us, and Azerbaijanis say he was from us and all that, he did not exist. So he goes to his piano teacher. He wanted to learn how to play the piano. So he said, how long does it take for me to learn the piano? They said 10 years. So Nasruddin says, I'll come in the 10th year. The whole point being that he is able to convey these truths that you just cannot. And I learned that, from using humor to be able to, bridge whatever you want to do it, because you engage it. And the other thing, as you well know probably better than I do, that I learned, from my mentors who taught me a little bit about public speaking, was begin with a story.
100%.
You got them in the first 30 seconds or first 45 seconds, you probably got them for the rest of the 20 minutes. By the way, I never speak more than 20 minutes on the public platform. That is a magic number that one should stop at. because after that, your attention span is gone.
I think that this idea of humor actually is something that the audience should really be not only in terms of you did it for your books, but in their marketing, in what they're sharing for their products to kind of capture the attention. The hook has to be really good, and when there's humor, it's memorable as well. I might have to go through my manuscript and add a few of those mythical character stories as well. We'll see.
And I can leave you a few. There's no copyright on them. By the way, you know what you were saying earlier? Just a point that occurred to me.
Yeah.
You're in a business. Great business, but your crystal, when you sell your crystal, you have to buy more crystal, more raw material to manufacture that.
Yes.
Being in the information industry is so great. I can keep on selling my books. I can keep on selling my work. I still have my raw material here.
Amazing. So true.
And that's the difference between being in the information industry and this.
So true.
The books may be a way to go.
Yeah, books and programming, I think, right? And it's IT, nutrition.
Yes.
Right. All right. So listen, we have all these conversations. You mentioned 20 minutes. I don't know what time we're at, but we'll make this our concluding question. Okay. I know that, we have all these conversations. We have interviews in life. We make different statements and sentences, and we just don't know what sentence we speak is going to become our legacy. We don't know what interview we make is going to be the one that becomes iconic. Okay. So I want this one to be sentimental. This interview here that we're having, let's assume that this moment becomes that moment that is your legacy. That long after you're gone, people are going to watch this. What would you say let's make it even more sentimental, not just our audience. What would you say to your grandchildren, to your great-grandchildren, to your great-grandchildren? What sentences would you speak and what story would you share?
So the sentence that I would speak to them is that legacy and heritage is not going back. Legacy is going forward. So think about that. What are you going to build? When you look at your heritage, I'm talking to my great-grandchildren, you will perhaps know from the books and the work that I have done, and if they care to read my books, is how our forefathers moved from South Asia, from a little port from the Indian subcontinent, braving 3 weeks of heavy monsoons, with the North Star as being your only guide, no compasses, no GPS, that the captain had, way back in the 1800s. They landed on the shores of Eastern Africa, not knowing the language, not knowing the country. They had been persecuted back home because of some faith issues. The British took away what little cattle that they had because they could not pay the taxes because there had been 4 years of drought. That's how our ancestors moved from the Indian subcontinent, and they had to go to Africa to seek, newer pastures. Today, that same community, that same people who moved from South Asia, from India, to the East African coast, now live in almost 40 countries. Riyaz, you are a product of that particular heritage and ancestry, where we moved. We're in 40 countries, successful. But imagine what those people had to go through for you and I to be where we are at. And my message to my great-grandchildren would be, think of those people as to how they braved the monsoons and how adventurous they were. I don't want them to go back in those thousands, because even today I joke with people to say, you're traveling business class, if your glass of orange juice is not cold enough, you complain. Those people had one glass of water, 1 cup of water a day to drink, because water was very scarce over those 3 weeks that they had to travel. So think about what they did. My question again to them would be, they built something for us. We were able to build something more as we spread. What are you going to build? And that would be my message, if they're at all here, to my great-grandchildren.
Dr. Hasnain Walji, thank you so much for being here.
Pleasure is all mine. Thank you, Riyaz, for the opportunity.
That was Dr. Hasnain Walji. You can find out more about him in the description. And of course, you can also look him up online on Amazon as well. Be sure to subscribe, like, and share. Turn those notifications on so you know every time we release a new video or decide to go live. Thank you for watching.